have a question here from Solon. I think that's how you pronounce it. Solon, Solon. Thank you for this, Solon. Why are some clients successful when leaving the session, but return to the unwanted behavior hours or days later? For example, he says, I have a client who wanted to quit smoking. They left happy as a non-smoker, and the next day called me that they fell back to smoking again. We sorted it out with a follow-up session, and again a few days later, they called and asked for a new session. Well, I think that there's a very good reason for this, and that is that smoking actually isn't the problem. Why would someone return to smoking? If your therapy had been successful, let's assume that you were successful, okay, in terms of you could give a good therapy session. Let's assume that. Then if they relapse, either by going back to the same problem or having another problem which is equally as severe or bad or unhealthy, then it means that problem is acting as a kind of personally generated therapy for them, which means that their smoking is helping them cope with something else in their life. So really what you need to do is look at other areas of their life which may be causing them to want to smoke or overeat or whatever the symptom is. Okay, because I like to think of symptoms not necessarily as being the problem, but in some cases as a way of coping with the problem. So normally this would be the reason. This is assuming that you gave good therapy. Of course, if your therapy session wasn't good enough in terms of the things you're missing out, and it was just a simple smoking problem, well then of course you just need to look at what you're doing and maybe look at other approaches to helping people quit. But the first response that comes to mind here is that the client is using smoking as a way of coping with something else. It may be a lot of stress, for example. So you need to kind of go back, wind back, if you like, in time to see when they first started smoking and when it got really bad, if they've quit before, why did they relapse before? A little tip that might help you in terms of identifying this if they can't tell you consciously what it is. Aside from doing like automatic writing or something at an unconscious level to get that information, you know, I used to give my clients a form, an A4 piece of paper, pre-printed, and it had 7 columns, which were 7 days, but they weren't labeled Monday, Tuesday, whatever. They were labeled 1, 2, 3 to 7. Okay, but they represented 7 days. And the reason I didn't list them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is because what happens if they come in on a Friday? I'd have to give them 2 forms for the following week as well. So it's always 1, 2 to 7. So they go away and they start filling in the form on the first column, number 1, the following day. And when they come back, they bring this form back with them. And then you can see really pretty much the triggers and what's been happening to them, how much they want to smoke, how desperate they are, whatever. Now, in that column for each day, you have 3 columns within each column. The first is how much do they want to smoke? How strong is their desire to smoke? On a scale, let's say, from 1 to 3, 1 being not that important, 2, yes, they really would like to, but 3, desperate. Okay, so whichever one they tick, of course, first of all, you can, whichever one they write a number in, you can see how desperate they were at that particular moment. Okay, the second column, there's 3 columns, if you remember, in each column. The second is the time of day. Okay, so maybe like 7:45 a.m. They tick desperate, for example. Okay, maybe it might be having a coffee. Maybe number 2, I could do without it, but I want one anyway, type of thing. And so you do this, so the 3 columns. Okay, so first of all is how desperate they are. Number 2 is the time. Number 3 is the context. What were they doing? Okay, so you've got the time of day and you've got the context. So 7:45, waking up. 9:30, coffee. 11, important phone call. 12, argument with my boss, whatever. Okay, so you're getting this map, if you like. It's important that they fill this in before they smoke. So they take the form away and maybe fold it up around their cigarettes or whatever. And every time they feel like smoking, they fill the form in first, not after, first. Okay. Now, this gives you a lot of great information when they come back. First of all, what happens if they haven't filled it in? It tells you they're not motivated. This is going to be tough. They're not motivated. Okay. Secondly, what happens if they fill it in and they stop halfway through? Again, they're not motivated enough. They started, but then they're going to relapse probably later if you try and get them to quit. If they bring it back and it's filled in, it means two things. Firstly, they are motivated to quit, number one. But secondly, on that form are all of the times they were desperate, the time of day and what they were doing or what was happening. So you can see the triggers there. Lastly, you will find there won't be that many ones, because having to fill the form in has made them consciously aware that they were about to smoke. And because the one represents, I don't really need it, they decide, I don't really need it. So you don't get many ones on there. So they've already taken conscious control over those just cigarettes they smoke unconsciously without thinking about it. Okay. You've got the 2s and the 3s. And of course, that gives you some data. And the 3s are the important ones. They're the ones that are going to likely sabotage their success in the future. So then you think, how can I change these 3s? What's happening here? Let's you say you have a 3 with coffee. Every time there's a coffee, the person drinks coffee 4 times a day and they go and have a smoke after coffee or with coffee. Imagine that's one scenario, because it could be one of those scenarios, of course. Okay, what can you do to change that relationship between smoking and coffee? Well, okay, you can say, okay, let's, for a trial period of 3 months or even 1 month or however long you feel is necessary, instead of drinking coffee, drink a glass of orange juice. Now, I've heard that orange juice doesn't go very well with smoking. So that's quite a good choice, okay? But the important thing is you're breaking up that association, that anchoring between smoking and coffee together. Okay. So you go through the list and you see all of those things and you disrupt them, okay? And so when you do the therapy on the second session, you base your therapy on those desperate cigarette times and contexts. Is there something you can do to change the context? Okay. So you're really homing in on those cigarettes that are going to make them relapse. Okay. This is assuming the smoking isn't a way of coping with some other problem. So let's go back to your original question, Solon. Why do they relapse? Okay, as I said, you need to deal with the cause of the smoking. That is, why are they smoking? What benefits are they getting out of the smoking first? That may be enough. Usually it's not enough, because you've dealt with the particular problem, anxiety, stress, or whatever, some other problem. Then you use this form to actually help them quit smoking. And it should be a lot easier, because they don't need the smoking in the same way they used to. Okay, let me just give you a little example of a case study related to this. I work with a woman who worked in like an office building. She was in the reception area downstairs in the foyer. Okay, I think it was a hospital, not an office. I can't quite remember, because I remember there were these rubber doors that opened like this. Okay, and so she had this desk in the reception area. Behind the desk were these kind of rubber doors, and what would happen is, when there was no one around, she would nip into the back office. This is when you could smoke indoors. She nipped into the back office through these rubber doors, and she'd light up a cigarette. We went through this list. Now, I didn't know about these rubber doors. I just knew at the time from her list that there was no one around. Okay, so she really felt like smoking. That's all I had as a bit of information. When I started questioning her, I found out she went into the back office, and she could see through these kind of plastic transparent windows in these rubber doors. If anybody was coming in, then she'd nip out and see them. Okay. Well, what I did, I realized after questioning her that the doors, it was these rubber doors that were triggering the need to smoke. She'd fancied a cigarette, she'd walk in. As soon as those doors flapped open and flapped back again with a bang, that would be the trigger to smoke. So I simply gave her a task. I got her to actually go out of the reception area to the side, into the foyer area, because there was a side door, an ordinary wooden door, and to go through that wooden door into the office instead. So we disrupted that trigger response pattern that had been established the whole time she was working there. We disrupted it by instead of going through the rubber doors, she'd go out into the foyer and then come through the side door. So the trigger of the rubber doors never happened. She was able to quit. Before that, she'd had great difficulty. Okay, so just an example of the information you can get by giving somebody this kind of form. Okay, Solon, so I hope that's helpful for you in some way and for others as well.